I'm Mr. James.
And I'm Mr. Ritchie.
And
we are the Educators.
And we are back with season 4. I keep saying season 4 like it's changed, everybody. No. Episode number 5. And it's red. That doesn't mean anything. We're not close to Valentine's Day, which we are, but it means nothing about that. I just thought red because if I click on the button right, we're going to talk about rockets today.
That's right. One of my favorite pastimes.
Yes, and you're going to be, once again, you're going to be the one that's kind of in charge of this. Take the lead, because I don't know that much about rockets, but yeah. I'm sure every one of our listeners wants to know more about what's going on with rockets.
Well, they're gonna.
But we do have, of course, we're still in a state of disarray, and yeah.
Yes, we are still right in the thick of it right now. So in Maine, though, we are on a downward trend. You know, I'm cautiously optimistic, but Super Bowl is this weekend, so we'll wait for a couple weeks after that to see the little spike. So we'll see. But 2.1 thousand new cases over the last week, which is down from 3.2 the week before. So a significant drop, you know, almost a third. Then in the United States, we are now under 1 million new cases, 955,000. And then that's down from last week's number of 1.14 million. So another good, solid decrease. In the world, 3.6 million in the last week versus the week prior was 4.3. So that follows, I think that's now a 4-week downward trend. And, you know, at any moment, could all turn right around again, and we'll see what goes on because, like we mentioned last week, some of the restrictions are coming off, and more people are getting antsy to get back out there. And so I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But so far, so good with you know, actually logging in a solid downward trend.
I think I saw a little post on a social media post today that you might have responded to about something going on about an anti-mask thing.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah, I just don't really have any patience or sympathy for anti-maskers at this point. And there are people in the government trying to enact legislation that they don't even have the authority to enact, saying that we're going to ignore the mask mandate and all that stuff. And it's just, one, it's not based in actual law, you know, but, you know, so I had to contact a few people to try to help prevent this from happening. And so far, the motion was tabled on a 4-3 vote, which I think is insane. That it was that close, 4-3. So not looking good in the logic and reason category around here, but you know, that's nothing new. So we'll see how that progresses from here, but it's definitely,
Hey, some trivia at the bottom. I don't know what that has to do with.
Yeah. Oh, I saw it for a second ago. No, it's off my screen. Yeah. Which rocket company just had a failure?
Yeah. That would be...
Well, it could be NASA, because NASA did have a failure a couple weeks ago, but there was one, I think, a little bit more explosive-y since then. Yeah.
From SpaceX.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was
which is our favorite.
There was a whole lot of methane that exploded that day because the Starship rocket that they are testing actually runs on methane and liquid oxygen. So it's actually significantly better for the environment than most rockets, which is actually
like an explosion. Cool. Literally, everyone goes, "Hey, great! It's not going to kill anybody. It's actually going to nourish us."
Yeah,
it's great. It can fertilize everything now. That's what we need. Yay!
Yeah, I can't remember what the byproducts of burning methane were. I think it's like, you know, some water vapor and some other minor things. It's nothing too bad. Not like gasoline.
Fresh air and like birds come out, sunshine. Yeah, probably not as good as that, but when you get products like that, it's great. Yeah. Well, we're going to switch over to science in the news. Notice this person. Everyone should notice this face and know
Never
who this
seen him
is.
before.
This is like the epitome of genius. When someone says genius, they're usually talking about Albert Einstein. It's just a miss. It's just like, use the word genius. Okay. Or you can use the word Einstein, which just means genius. Hey, Einstein, get over here. Yeah. But I put this specifically because of one of his theories, his big theory that we all should know, theory of general relativity, which is complicated. And it's just one of those things where, hey, we keep proving that
Yeah.
things are real, and that it's as weird as it is, things are turning out to work the way he said they would.
Yeah, every time that they go to test it again, it's further proven right. And I think it was amazing in its simplicity. So should we cover this one right now, or should we?
Yeah, I think we should go ahead with that one.
So
Got
yeah,
someone that's on the bottom. Yeah.
so the article, the Einstein's theory of general relativity, unveiled a dynamic and bizarre cosmos, and that is an understatement, because prior to knowing E equals mc squared, everything kind of made sense, and everything was just like a rock is a rock, the planet is here, the sun is there, stuff works, everything's good, the universe is real. And then all of a sudden E equals mc squared lets you know that everything is nothing. Everything is made up of energy.
Yep.
And not actual solid matter, that you could destroy a piece of matter and it turns into energy, and you can use energy to create matter, which is exactly how it happened at the moment of the Big Bang. And that's it was profound. And then also, when you spin off from E equals mc squared, you come up with a lot of really crazy stuff that's real, like the fact that, the closer you are to a gravitational object, the slower time goes, and the faster you travel, the slower time goes.
Yeah.
And people, when they hear those sort of things, they just think, oh, that's maybe it's a few trillionths off of a second, it's not a big deal, where does that have any application in life? And the answer is, any GPS connected device. If you haven't heard the story already, they launched GPS satellites into orbit, the first style of GPS, and they turned them on, and within minutes they were miles off, and within hours they were unusable and absolutely useless. And so they looked at the data, and they had to factor in that the satellites are traveling, almost 18,000 miles an hour. And they had to factor in Einstein's equations into the frequencies. And how GPS works is that if you have a phone right here, you've got a GPS satellite here and one like right here. They both ping at exactly the same time, and the phone measures the difference in time between the signal received by one satellite versus another. And once you get enough satellites signals, you can measure the time differences between them, and that tells you how far away they are. And so that alone was based in some pretty deep physics. But once your satellite is moving at 17,000 miles an hour, they found out that they have to actually factor in time slowing down for the satellites in order to make GPS accurate. And once they factored in that math into their algorithms, GPS started working. And GPS still works to this day. And it's still really the first generation almost of GPS. We haven't even had, a significant adaptation of GPS since the 70s, except for smaller and more sensitive receivers. But Einstein's theory of relativity. And then the latest thing I think that they talked about in that thing too was the ripples in the electromagnetic, like, what is it, what do they call it? I have to almost click on it right now to figure it out. But
I was gonna say space
black
time,
holes,
right?
I think we talked about it. Two black
gravitational
holes,
waves.
Gravitational waves. So actual ripples in the fabric of space-time, basically, And like, that's just crazy. It's crazy to think, there's this medium like sound. The medium of sound is air. And if there's no air, there's no sound. Well, the medium of gravitational waves is time itself. And it's just like, it's insane to think that we can measure to this level. But we can. And, while you and I talk about these things here, we've still got people out there that think that scientists can't read thermometers and measure the chemicals that are in the air. And so even though we've had this genius for almost 100 years, these mathematical theories, we still have to fight for basic science knowledge around here, which one of the reasons why we're here.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. That people like we're doing this amazing stuff and talking about these amazing, like, completely almost seemingly fictional,
Mm-hmm.
yet it computes out mathematically, everything adds up, and people are arguing over some of the most inane things.
Yeah,
Because,
and
oh, that isn't you're like, really, we solved that many years ago. We've moved
yeah,
on.
I
We
know,
can't keep going. A dog biting, it's trying to bite its tail. We can't keep doing that. You got to move forward.
right.
Everything's going to move forward. Those that don't move forward will be left behind, and no one's going to care.
It's just crazy
Honestly,
when those that are left behind suddenly jump in the front seat and start steering the
yeah, I
bus.
know. Like, so for some
And
reason they were able to get there and stuff like that.
it's
Like, they keep
like,
them down.
how do you get into power, and it's just people are psychology, I think I'm going to mention it later on too, is that you have to factor in psychology with everything that you're doing. And psychology of some people, like they hold so true to these fictional beliefs that they have to make them true, otherwise their purpose is gone. And so currently we still are, we were just talking about the numbers thing. We have people that deny that a pandemic is actually occurring, that 400,000 Americans have actually passed away from this virus. And it's people like that keep the Luddites. The Luddites are what are slowing us down, and that's the reason why the term Luddites exists. Is
Yeah, people
because there are
against
people that do this.
technology and don't believe in anything, that everything's happened. Those that completely just don't believe, things happen in history, as well as when they see it in front of them, they're like, nah, I'm not really seeing that. And they're like,
Yeah,
no, actually, you are seeing that, but we're not even thinking about that. We've moved on from that. You can't focus on that one thing. We have to move on. Sorry. Here, read these books. These will get you up to date partially. I mean, that's the thing. We're in here. We're in education just because we want to get people updated on what's happening. And honestly, we can't get updated, and that's why you read Future Shock, because we can't keep up to the future that's coming in front of us.
yep,
It's just way too fast.
yeah. And on that point too, I think that sometimes, like in this situation, the any repeat viewers might know, but like it's good to break up technology into chunks that you do prefer
Yeah.
and communicate with those around you who happen to be interested in other segments, and then you collaborate. And it's honestly just the history of democracy itself, is that you get thinkers together to communicate, debate, talk, and nothing but productivity comes out of it if it's a healthy debate backed by scientific structures and things like that. And so where I have more of a gravitation towards rockets and astrophysics and things like that, you've got an equal passion into music and health and
Mm-hmm.
human physical performance that I have no idea about. So
Yeah, just reading
that's
about it right now.
that's right. Yeah. And so and Einstein was one that he really liked the debate part of it. He was so confident. Like, when you come across real truth, you feel it. And once he figured it out, he's like, that's it. He knew exactly what it was. He was confident about it. And, millions of people didn't want to believe this because of the crazy
Oh
things
yeah.
that, it means. The expansion of the universe alone, like the fact that it's still expanding, so like, the space in our bodies right now, our bodies themselves are expanding through time, and the intracellular structures of our body, the space within it is expanding, and yet it's so universal that we don't feel it, we don't notice it, but right now we are larger than we were before a second ago, because the entire universe is expanding like a little sponge, like a dried out sponge that you add water to, that the whole thing just expands in all directions, is exactly what everything is doing
I
around us.
wish our subscribers would expand.
Yeah, right. I wish we could
All
pour some water
right.
on that dried out sponge.
Yeah, guys, make some comments, okay? We want that to expand too.
Hmm.
So, another,
We should have titled this "Einstein was wrong," and
yeah,
then then not.
clickbait.
Yeah.
Ugh. So, the Milky Way's newfound high energy glow hints at the secrets of cosmic rays.
Yeah.
Another
So
space thing.
yeah, there's so cosmic rays are radiation coming from cosmic sources, and they can range from anything. I mean, there are there's huge radiation coming from Jupiter, which is so much radiation that pretty much means that there'll never be humans that actually orbit Jupiter. There's just not enough material to keep the radiation from killing them. And like, so you have these objects around that just produce these different wavelengths, on the electromagnetic spectrum. And so they were looking at the inside of our galaxy, and the interior or the center of our galaxy is just bathed in this incredibly energetic, enormous things like cosmic rays. And it really got me thinking about it. Like, if people are wondering where did life come from, the ultimate question. I mean, honestly, look towards structures like the inside of our galaxy. Like, just, that there's millions of planets just in that area, swirling around millions of stars, and there's just it's the universal laboratory. There's probably worlds of every different type being bathed in every different type of energy. There's so many like collisions and expansions and explosions, and it's just this chemical laboratory of things and energy. And like, life and everything is energy that comes from another source. And it's like, what I think that, when you're thinking about where could life and the complicated things that create it happen, well, look at the inside of our galaxy. It's just millions of worlds just being showered in different forms of energy. Something's going to happen. Like, there's going to be amazing things that we have yet to discover. We may never discover it because they're so far away, but like, these things are real. We can measure them. I think that they mentioned something like the energy output they think is like 1 quadrillion volts. And the highest number that they can achieve on Earth was something like 5 trillion volts, which is still enormous.
Yeah.
But they're 995 trillion volts away from what is achievable at the center of the galaxy. Now, we can recreate the temperature of our sun here on Earth, in many different ways. But to be so far away, like, humans cannot replicate that amount of power, which is kind of cool. There's still some mystery out there. So I think that it's easy to look past these huge news stories, but there's worlds of information that we're missing out by not paying attention to.
It's kind of like the news things are just being like scientists again saying it's really amazing. We've been telling you this for years, but it just keeps being more amazing. We thought about this new thing's more amazing that we just thought about. And yeah.
And that's what the best part about science is it's self-correcting and ever expanding. I mean, if you can never say, oh, the science used to be wrong and now it's right. Well, no, that's science. That's how it works. Yeah. And when Edwin Hubble discovered the expansion of the universe, I mean, it melted minds, and it just made people realize what is possible out there. And that was in the 1920s and 30s, around the same time as Albert Einstein. And all of a sudden, here it is many years later, almost 100 years later or whatever. And we're like, yeah, it's still awesome. Like, all that stuff is still true.
Yeah.
Still awesome, but we have better optics. We have better telescopes. We can see much better. And wait till the James Webb telescope gets launched soon. Like, if you thought Hubble was a good telescope, just wait for the James Webb Telescope. It is going to be amazing.
No, I can't wait for those crazy pictures. And the last item we have for Science in the News is about COVID-19. And I just saw this because I said, all right, we'll just put it up because I know all this debate. COVID-19 precautions may be reducing cases of flu and other respiratory infections. My thing is like, yeah, we know this.
Water is wet.
Yeah.
Yeah. No surprise. I did find it so interesting. Like, I wonder if our entire what we're focusing on and prevention of disease will suddenly change, because it says in it there was this serious affliction. I forgot what it was called. It's like an acronym that affects like infants a lot.
Yeah.
And they said that that's, being reduced, but they said that it was spread mainly through respiratory droplets. And then they focused on this, that sit for, live on surfaces for 6 hours. And the main method of combating this specific type is rigorous hand washing. And I was like, well, it kind of sounds like the logic that they put out at the beginning of COVID.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, respiratory droplets, they're only landing on surfaces if you're not breathing them in. When you're talking with someone, you're sharing this air. And so I think that I feel like there's going to be a shift where we're like, all right, yeah, washing hands is great, but we are also really, in fact, breathing in the respiratory droplets of others. We've tested this out. So I just found it interesting that on that article that they focused on washing of hands when respiratory droplets were specifically mentioned. But
I think it's great that as teachers, we're not getting colds and all this stuff that kids could potentially spread right now because everyone having masks on. I think that's great. I think that's going to be the rest of my life. I don't care. I'll keep getting better masks.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get colds from kids. I don't want to get any of that stuff. I've got an agenda. I've got a schedule. I've got workouts. I've got healthy eating. I've got all these things to do, and I can't be slowed down. And
I'm not doing it. I've tried it out. I've tested it out, but I'm not doing it yet. But once we have like solid evidence of like these super strains or whatever creeping their way up into the Northeast, I'm double masking. I got a plan.
I'm actually ready for that too.
Yeah, you got to use those N95s. I'm telling you, man. You got to get one of them plus your cloth over mask, and I might even end up wearing one of those shields like the some of our staff have, like the little eyeglass, but they have the shields on them for the littles, because when you're teaching them how to build, teaching them how to use a computer, you've got to get close to them. Yeah. When a little girl comes up to you because her mask fell off and she just can't get it on her ear because she's a kindergartner, like, you help her get that mask on. Like, you just have to do things as a teacher.
Oh, you don't use saran wrap? Just like wrap it around there?
Yeah, exactly.
I guess I've been doing it wrong for these past few
today
months.
Today there was this, I'm teaching coding to kindergartners, and I have this class, and there's a specific student who needs more help. He needs, he doesn't have a lot of coordination yet.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to teach them the 2-finger method to a mouse touchpad. One finger stays still and clicks. The other one moves around.
Yeah.
So that way they're not like on an iPad, they would normally just use one finger and drag objects around. But when you try to do the same thing on a touchpad, the friction is different. It's jumpy, and as soon as you get off the button, it drops the object, and it confuses the kids. And so I teach them the 2-finger method, and he was just not getting it. He's like pushing with both hands, and so you have to do in that situation hand over hand. Yeah. And hand over hand was a method that I had never experienced in my entire professional life until 2 years ago, when I was working in special ed, and special needs kids needed hand over hand guidance to learn certain things. And I was like, touching a student, oh my God, like, I didn't realize that was, but these little kids, they need that guidance sometimes, especially kids that are in special needs students. And if it wasn't for me doing that, the kid wouldn't have gotten the subject. And so now, immediately after I do this hand over hand, I have to then stand up, go wash my hands, dry. And, I'm like thinking to myself, it's just impossible to be safe, and be a teacher right now, especially with littles. And so, we're dealing with it. doing everything I possibly can, but sometimes there's just some stuff that comes our way as teachers that you just can't plan for.
Which is perfect segue to From an Educator.
That's right.
And today, parent connections. So we just did grading, and with grading sometimes comes a backlash of parents wondering what's going on because they have not kept up with their students, their children.
Yeah.
And yeah, and we're fighting the good fight every single day, trying to get students more engaged, trying to get them to do their work. We have homework now we never had. So this year is we're trying to meet them on all fronts, and the parents are out of the loop, and we've never really had to keep the parents in the loop of what we're doing because it's been, we're the break for classroom teachers, basically. That's what we've heard for years. But what we're doing is very important, and
Yeah.
we have to grade. And we have to grade, we have to really tell these students what they're doing and say, you need to be doing your work. So we have to do a lot of connecting with parents. And we each have a couple little things we want to mention about that. There's not going to be a rant. We can do that later. But yeah, my two big things is I think if students understand your material, there's going to be little to discuss with a parent. If a student understands what they have to do, they could say, I don't want to do it. But there's little to discuss because obviously they're probably talking to their parents that they're not doing stuff, or they've drawn their line in the sand, and they're like, nope, I'm not doing this. But they understand the material. I almost like it better that if as long as they understand it, okay, you didn't do it, but I know you understand it. Great. Maybe I'll just give you a decent grade to spite you, okay? Because you know it already. Also, when I'm talking to a parent or writing or whatever, they need to know that I care, and they need to know that they sometimes lack resources. So I need to know that they lack resources. They need to know that they lack resources as well. As far as, okay, so maybe you're upset mostly because someone didn't give you this link, or you're clicking on this wrong or something, or maybe you needed to do this. There's no special thing. It's just,
in my case, there was one grade where the teacher wrote a schedule for the students where the UA time was incorrect. I didn't find that out till grades closed.
yeah.
Oops.
So, and that's the thing. It's just saying, hey, we're talking about, do we understand resources? Once you've set that all up, if the parent still is defiant in a way about what you're doing, and you've done everything to a T, scientific, data driven, all this stuff, then it's on them. Whatever. That's the thing. We did our job. They can complain, and there are a lot of people in this world that spend their lives complaining and feeling entitled
Yeah.
because they feel the world owes them something, although they haven't contributed much to the world.
And they get results sometimes, like that's,
Yeah, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and they think from being a squeaky wheel it makes them important. But smart people talk about ideas. Complaining about people all the time doesn't make you smart.
no,
Not at all.
it's so true that they need to know that you care. I think in my responses to parents, I think what they aren't ready for is someone on the other end that like knows their student, cares, and can tell them something about their child. And I know their personality, and I mentioned that, if someone parent emails me and says that why is my student not turning in something, I say to them usually, you know what, I was very surprised that they didn't either. That's very unlike them. It's you're right, like that is strange. I'm glad you mentioned it. Maybe you could help me figure out what it is, because I don't know. And I have to mention that we have to consider psychology in our replies, because initially when these parents reach out and they have this tone that you can read in their email, that that they're blaming you, the teacher, for their students' performance, and you sort of have to check yourself before replying. And that was a common thing. Sorry, I got a text here. There's a common thing for people to just get upset, especially with something so personal as a child. And so you have to consider your own psychology. And when you work with special needs students, like behavioral kids, like I did, they had this whole thing called I Escape. It's an acronym where you check your thoughts, how you're feeling, can you handle this before you engage the student. Well, the same thing goes with their parents. You have to check yourself, but also think of their psychology, think of where they're coming from, what their angle is. If you're not good at this, you might not end up being good as a teacher in the long run. Like you may be able to deliver information great to a student, but half of teaching is this personal relationship that you can have with both student and parent. And basically try to answer their questions before they're asked is a good way that I've gone about it. Just think about where they're leaning in their questions. Think about what you think they're trying to assume is the problem. Answer that question first, and also remind them of their important role in the situation. Be like, I only know what happens when I see your student or your child, and they're my student. You have to deal with that stuff at home. Like that's it's not necessarily throwing it at the parent, but basically saying, if your student's not turning in homework, I don't know why. I don't know why. And the parents that are reaching out aren't the parents of the students that I would expect to not pass in work. They're the parents of the students that don't normally fail to pass in work. And so it's easy to use that phrase and just say, yes, it is very strange that your student isn't, your child isn't turning in work. Like, help me find this solution. I want to find this solution as much as you do. And
those are the ones, the ones that care are the ones reaching out. But we do have occasionally those that don't really care and feel the child should be on autopilot doing everything. And when they're not, they want to blame someone else because they're like, my child should be automatically doing this, but it's something that's going on with their child and with maybe their parenting. That's that's the issue. It has nothing to do with us. But they want to have a scapegoat. And I've had, even prior to working public schools, private music lessons for 13 and a half years. Or 15 years. I've had that, been dealing with that a few times where it's like, okay, I can only do so much here in a half an hour once a week. You have to do something on your end. You can't blame everybody for not making the next Mozart just for the fact that it's, you try to make this as interesting as possible. They have to put some work in. And if you don't put the work in, you don't get anything out. And you want to kind of bring it back to parents and say, how did it work for you when you didn't put work in? How are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. Can you think back to your own experience and think of a time that you could have put more effort in? Well, I'm sure your child's going to have a similar experience, and maybe just talk to them about, like, I don't know, something like how I'd say it was, front load the burden, do your work first, play after, get the stuff out of the way. And that's kind of how I teach the kids too. Because, and some of them don't go home to these parents that can teach them that skill, just the simple skill of, work and then play. Sometimes kids don't get even that. And so, when you do have a parent that reaches out, take that as use
opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. And an opportunity to really help out a kid.
It's an opportunity to teach another kid that's just grown up.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes that's basically what it is.
Honestly, the psychology isn't very different sometimes.
I know, the apple doesn't fall far from trees.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Well, let's talk about rockets. All right. Yeah. He's ready. Oh, no, let's go back to that one. Okay, here we go. Just moving our faces around, right in the middle. Let's talk about rockets. Let you talk about rockets. I just know they go up.
Yeah. Well, I think so the reason why you had mentioned this one after last week was because there was a successful launch here in Maine of a small sounding rocket. So a sounding rocket is a rocket that doesn't go to space. It is usually launched high in the atmosphere to measure things, or honestly, nowadays, it's usually just to test objects. And so this sounding rocket was, maybe I'd say 8 to 10 inches in diameter, so not even a very large, large rocket. But here in Maine, we have a company that developed their own biofuel solid propellant, and I'll talk about propellants in a minute too. But basically, it's a propellant that's carbon neutral, and they are going to attempt to launch to space, and eventually orbital, there's a huge difference between making it to space and going orbital. And the difference is, how long do you want to stay in space? 15 minutes or forever? And so this rocket only went to 4,000 feet, so not even a mile, but that's still, I mean, it's higher than almost any model rocket, any hobbyist model rocket goes, way higher. And a successful recovery, it landed, it had a payload, it measured some things. But what it did is it tested out and confirmed the viability of this biofuel solid rocket propellant. And that's exciting. And another thing that's awesome is that it happened in Maine. And that's because Maine, being a coastal state, and especially the shape of Maine, allows it to put satellites into a polar orbit. And a polar orbit allows a satellite to view every single spot on Earth over however many rotations it goes. But rockets themselves, I always struggled as a kid. Why don't we just build an airplane that can go to space? What is it with rockets? What is it that we have to do, to get to space? Well, of course, space has no oxygen, so you can't take an airplane higher than, I don't know, 50,000 feet usually without struggling to get enough oxygen in there. And I might be wrong about the 50,000 feet, but hey, if someone wants to challenge that, send us a message.
Yeah.
But basically, you get to a certain point. Jetliners fly at around 35,000 feet. You get much higher than that, and there's not a lot of oxygen left to burn in the engine of the aircraft. And so you have to bring your oxygen with you, which is heavy and incredibly difficult to do. So you have to then, instead of flying at a reasonable speed, slowly up and up, you have to expend it fast and use momentum to really carry you. And so that's why rockets take off so fast. That's why they go so fast. They're the most efficient means of getting to space possible. Rockets really are just completely bare bones, stripped down, purpose built. Whatever isn't needed gets ejected out of the side, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because any weight that you carry with you is just more effort that it has to put in order to get to orbit. And right now, it costs about $10,000 a pound to put anything in orbit. So, weigh yourself and then figure out how much it would cost to send you into orbit. But so what we're looking at on the left side is a V2 rocket. So this is actually the rocket, one of the very first rockets, and it was the type that bombed Europe. That Germany used to bomb Europe. So Germany came up with the first really useful military rocket that carried large warheads. I mean, we've been using rockets since a couple thousand years ago in warfare. However, they were very small, not usually, carrying warheads per se, but so they were always solid. They were using black powder. And the V2 rocket was the first to be liquid fueled, and it was enormous in comparison. And so that type of rocket uses liquid oxygen and, it's got an alcohol and water mixture. So you combine the two into the burner, and it creates a lot of pressure and launches. Of course, there's many other types of fuel you can use. Most notably, people really in America remember the space shuttle. And the space shuttle was a very unique thing. I wish we had a picture of that. But it had both solid rocket boosters on the side, and then it used hydrogen and oxygen to burn. There you have SpaceX that uses basically kerosene and liquid oxygen. You have, trying to think, the Starship that uses methane and liquid oxygen. So you always have liquid oxygen because liquid oxygen is more dense. You can carry more of it with you. And then you have something else flammable to send it through. And then there's even hypergolic fuels that just once you squirt two different chemicals together, they just instantaneously ignite. They call it hypergolic. You use those usually, like if you're landing on the moon, you use hypergolic fuels. So that way you just know that your rocket is going to light no matter what. As long as these two chemicals touch each other, it creates fire. You don't have to worry about ignition source and stuff like that. But to get off Earth, you have to have an incredibly aerodynamic shape. You're traveling, again, going through the atmosphere at thousands of miles an hour. Once you get to orbit, you're going 17,500 miles an hour. So it's got to be aerodynamic until it gets to space, and then it can look ugly. Which if you ever looked at the moon landing vehicles, they were not aerodynamic because they didn't need to be. Rockets carry many different subsystems. If you're looking over here, you can see at the very top of the rocket, it's got the automated gyro control. They put all the electronics at the top. And that's for a bunch of different reasons. But so that's called the payload. And that's what guides the rocket. If this was a real V2, you would have a warhead up there, which might be what I see at the top. I see a line. I just can't tell.
Yeah, probably.
And so all these different subsystems work together, and they have to work perfectly, because if there's any sort of an engine issue, the engine either explodes or shuts off, and either one doesn't get you to space today. And that's a bad thing. But rockets were born out of an efficient method to kill people. Once Germany realized that they didn't have to fly, put people into an airplane and fly them a couple thousand miles and drop the bombs on Europe. Once they realized that they could just sit comfortably in their mountains or wherever and launch these rockets and let them fly themselves into Europe and still cause as much damage, they realized that they had a thing going there. They were like, okay, well, we could expend, less money overall, less risk, takes less time to deliver the warhead from point A to point B. And all of a sudden, somebody said, what if we put a person in that thing? I wonder what we could do if we use that to, a bigger version.
Yeah.
And then, people started thinking about that. And that's where you get Werner von Braun. Now, Werner von Braun, the maker of the moon rocket, the Saturn V, was a Nazi scientist. I mean, he literally was, and worked on V2 rockets. There was I think there was a joke that Werner von Braun, his goal was always to get his rockets to the moon, but sometimes they landed on Europe. And, and that's just because it really is true that the history of rockets is intertwined with World War II and, efficient means of destruction. But at least going into the future, rockets are still going to be around. There is no better way, unfortunately, to this day, that there's no better way to get to space. You need a chemical rocket. You can't electronically propel yourself to space. You have to push something out in order to gain thrust if you don't have air to push. And so therefore, rockets are our ride off of this rock. For better or worse, if we're going to expand to the moon, to Mars, and beyond, we need rockets. We're going to need chemical rockets. Once you get to space, sure, we can use a xenon rocket, something that takes almost, no chemical fuel to really provide thrust, but it doesn't work here on Earth. And so we're going to need them. And I'm happy we got them. And for, I know there's a lot of debate as to whether or not the space program is important, which is unfortunate just even for me to say that. But I have to say that there is a lot of history. There's a huge reason, and the reason is that we have to become a multiplanetary species eventually. The only other option, literally, is to let us die out.
And that segues to our 2021 space goals.
That's right.
I think you already kind of answered one of them. Oh no, maybe I didn't put that one there. Okay. I was like, electronic. Can we go to the moon? Can we get up to space using electronics? Yeah, not really, I guess.
Not yet. I mean, unless somehow we can find a way to generate, I don't know,
plasma of some sort, or I don't know.
Yeah, but it's so difficult to aim it in the right direction and provide enough thrust to really make a difference. And it's It's crazy, but I see the first one. So what do we have in place for space project this year? The moon is ultimately, but so we might see the launch of Artemis this year. Artemis is NASA's approach, kind of an old school approach. They're probably going to do at least one test flight, probably into low Earth orbit, and then hopefully a test flight around the moon. I did find out that SpaceX will not be sending someone around the moon any sooner than 2023. But luckily that program, which is called Dear Moon, is still planned, which is good. But I'm sure that they're thinking of trying to do a circumlunar mission this year, putting an object around the moon and bringing it back. So we have, in a few days, February 18th, we have the Perseverance robot landing on Mars, which is going to be one of the most exciting things that you could ever see. It has this thing called the 7 minutes of terror. You know, you have this car-sized, nuclear-powered robot that is going to fly down to the surface of Mars on a jetpack that then extends it to the ground on a cable. And then after the cable is severed, the jetpack flies away and crashes itself on purpose. And then you have a nuclear-powered car-sized robot scanning for life on Mars. And it joins a host of other robots kind of doing similar things. But it's something special. It's going to be pretty awesome. So a bunch of cool stuff coming up for 2021. I think that Blue Shift, the company that just recently launched, I mean, they're only going to expand even further. I think they're going to go for a space shot soon, so trying to get to space. And so is another popular rocket builder that I follow on YouTube. They usually do model rockets, and they've just finally decided, you know what, we're going to go to space. So there's a lot of people looking at space. I'm heavily invested into space right now. I think that that's going to be our future. I think it is really, truly our only future. I just don't know if people are ready for it yet or not. And hopefully the coronavirus and our economic crisis doesn't get in the way of all these plans.
Yeah, that was my question. Will Maine send people to the moon? It's Blue Shift, I guess.
They won't. No, Blue Shift will never be a manned rocket program. Blue Shift will always be satellite, small satellite. That's their only goal. And to get a new fuel approved for human use, I mean, I don't think that they're going to go through the hoops for that. But SpaceX is up to the challenge. I think that they're the best to deal with it on a cheap budget. I think that they're going to be trying to send people to the moon. And I think that there are going to be people from Maine going to the moon. I know that Jessica Meir, one of the astronauts from Maine, was selected as one of the first people to go to the moon. So, yeah, Maine will be sending people to the moon.
I'll be on that, probably the 1,000th one. I'll go up.
I'd love, yeah. As soon as I can. Yeah, as soon as I can put together that $10,000 a pound, I'll be going.
Yeah, we can go with that money, and you have to be able to also hold your breath for 22 minutes.
Yeah. All right, I'll get working on it.
Yeah, practicing. The other thing is, what is our best fuel options for space? I think you discussed that quite a bit already.
Yeah, I can't remember what they're called right now. It's escaping me, but you take really powerful electromagnetic field and you shoot a little bit of xenon gas through the field, and it accelerates the molecules of xenon gas to such a high speed that it creates thrust. And I cannot believe I can't remember what it's called right now. But basically it's the closest thing to an electromagnetic propulsion that you can really have, like, realistically right now. And they're used commonly. The satellites that SpaceX launches, that's what they use. They're using these electromagnetic, xenon thrusters. I can't remember what they're called, but I have to look it up. But so they're in use, and so there's hundreds and hundreds of satellites out there with this, and that's really probably going to be the best thing to get us from point A to point B without gigantic, like, refueling stations in space or something like that. But honestly, it's all up in the air right now. Even the idea of I don't know, like I've been a fan of the space industry since the 90s, so I just have a very pessimistic outlook that everything is going to be terribly slow. We're not going to have xenon gas thrusters pushing humans anytime soon, I don't think, because that would require too much forward thinking. That's, so someday the xenon gas thruster, best fuel option in space, but to get to space, it is still probably the methane rocket. Methane and liquid oxygen, it produces at least carbon, and it's sustainable, and you can make methane on Mars theoretically. So,
hey, that's actually good. Well, I hope we did a little bit of a dive for those that are really interested in rockets. This is the only way we're going to get off this planet. Rocket's going to be shooting up in the air, in 100 years, nonstop, getting people off this planet. It's just going to be, just leaving this planet takes so much power just to get off this planet. Once you get into space, it's just the big, vast vacuum, and you have to be in it for the long run. So that's where human longevity comes into, and maybe cryogenics and all this stuff that we
we will talk about. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about generation ships someday, the methods that we will use to travel the stars. And I figured it out. It's the ion thruster. The ion thruster is what I was thinking about the whole time.
That's what we need, an ion thruster. Do you have a rant today?
No, I don't think I've got a rant today.
I could say something and try to get you into a rant.
Yeah, no, you know what? I had lots to be upset about, but I'd rather not revisit that. Yeah. I don't know if I've got a rant. I have to prepare one, Yeah.
I'm going to do a tiny little rant.
Okay.
Just a tiny little rant.
Let's do it.
All right. You hear that music? Okay, good. As long as you can hear the music. So, I have a problem with a washing machine. The washing machine has got something called a thermostar in it, or whatever. It's in the bottom of the washing machine. Washing machines are really hastily put together. They're the ones that are very expensive, measure everything, right? They tell you this is done, blah blah blah. They have 50 different issues that they can give to you, like error codes and such. This thing literally has one thing that's keeping it from washing. Now, all I want a washing machine to do is to wet my clothing, throw the soap in, tumble it around, get rid of the soap, get rid of some of the water, and then I can throw it in the dryer. That's it. I don't need everything to be measured. Person that went to fix it broke it and then used jumper cables to hook the thing up so it would work. It stopped working, and now it doesn't turn on, and I've been without, washing clothes for a week, and it sucks.
Ouch. Oh, I didn't know, man. We were very close. Not to extend your rant, but we had our washer machine start giving us problems, and I'm convinced that it's a plug in the inlet, and I can't get to the inlet because the valve to the inlet doesn't work. So you shut off the valve and water is still flowing through it, so you can't separate it from the rest of the house. Basically, the entire house full of water will empty through that hole, and it cleared itself up. We were basically looking at buying new, incredibly expensive metal boxes known as washing machines.
Yeah,
$700 and stuff like that. And then luckily ours started working again. So hopefully you have the luck that we had, because
it just does it. Well, this is the piece that's been ordered, and now it's not going to come in for a month and a half. The person goes, it's going to be in he goes, wow, I just checked it. It's actually going to be in, so I said a week, but it's going to be in in 4 days. Okay, I'll be back. And then you get a little note that says, it's not in yet, but it's not from the specific company fixing it. They just said, it's taking a little bit longer. But then the day for the person to come to do to change it out, it was still in the books. And I double checked it. It goes, yes, we're still coming today between 8 and 5. I waited all day and then made a couple calls, and they said, yeah, the part's not going to come until the middle of March. And we're like, terrible. Guess what, LG? Yeah, we're saying it. LG, life is good. You're going to have to get us a new washing machine, because we're not going to deal with that.
That is rough. It's funny. Mine is also an LG.
Yeah.
Not happy with it.
Yeah. Well, the thing it's just one of those things. I mean, washing clothing in this COVID era, I literally
Yes.
get out of work, shed all the clothing, put it in dirty laundry, take a shower after work every single day. My showers come after work because the clothing is has been saturated in who knows what. So that's why I have to go through clothing. I'm not going to wear a pair of pants again or anything again because it has to be washed. That's just something I set from day one with this. Gonna have to wash everything, so I have to have enough clothing to go through. And I had to go to my mother's the other night to get some pants washed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'll dry it. Just try this and stuff like that. She didn't
I,
know her washer so well, so I'm like,
I
I'll take
swear
care of
I
it.
could almost like take an old washer machine, find a way to just like you said, make it add soap to water, spin around a few times, and send it into the sewer and move on.
Yeah, it's such a mess. Well, that's gonna be our podcast tonight, everybody. It's vlogcast podcast. We're still gonna call us a podcast, even though some of you can watch us right now and look at us.
Yeah.
Because YouTube, offers a
It's
chance
easier.
for you to see us, and we can do these slides that we've been doing this season. And yeah, there's a lot of visuals we want to use. Not that you want to look at us right now in these photos taken in the summer at a different
Right.
time.
Different time. I was checking to make sure I wasn't wearing the same shirt. I'm not. No.
Yeah, and I was like, what I'm wearing extra clothing now. I can wear extra clothing. See, yeah, I like this.
I look at that pre-mask era. Gosh, I miss those days.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's going to be double mascara pretty soon.
Yeah, it is. It really
Actually, the way I just said that, it sounds like I'm talking about makeup. Mascara.
is. Double mascara.
Yeah.
There we
Double
go.
mascara. Well, your eyes are really dark. Well, I'm wearing double mascara. Okay.
It's a
That's
good band
great.
name.
Yeah, but yeah. So we'll definitely be back. We have a 3-part series. Another one coming up pretty soon on quantified self for those
Yes.
that want to know what we've been talking about for quite a while. Why we might show our wrists off every now and then, and I'll bring a strap that goes across my chest, and I'll show my Withing scale out and all this stuff that measures everything that I can possibly think of. Until I get, a CGM and some other different devices and stuff. But I don't want to sleep in an MRI machine every single night. Although if we could, I probably would.
That'd be pretty cool. I mean,
Like
I think that you have to drink that radioactive liquid MRI machine. Am I thinking the right stuff?
barium, you're thinking like a barium solution? Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. I wouldn't want to do that every day, but I would like. I want to get an MRI. Just I want to get the treatment, man. Just go look through my brain. Let me. No.
Yeah. I know. If they can.
Yeah.
It just takes over. It's one of those expensive things that we have to
I know.
That I'm looking into that. It might be another country we have to go to get
Yeah,
some of this
I
stuff
know,
done.
right,
But we're also going to do something on health and nutrition. I'm going to dig in deep to a diet I know very well, plant-based, and talk about that stuff. And maybe we can put a clicky, I'm just going to say clickbait, but some sort of interesting, so some sort of name that might get more people to click on this thing. So
Right.
we'll see. But until then, I'm Mr. James,
I'm Mr. Ritchie.
and
We are.
we are the educators. Have a good night or morning or whenever you listen to this. See you later.